She arrived in the city the way most important things did now. Quietly, misfiled, and 10 minutes late, according to 3 different clocks that all disagreed with one another. The transit gate sighed behind her and folded itself back into the pavement, leaving nothing but a faint smell of overheated metal and a warning message scrolling across her retinal interface, reminding her not to blink too slowly. Blinking too slowly made humans uncomfortable. Someone had written an entire sociological paper about it. She had skimmed the abstract and decided blinking was overrated anyway. Her name for the duration of this experiment was Mara. It was a simple human name, soft at the edges, easy to pronounce even when spoken by mouths full of disappointment. Her real name contained tonal shifts and electromagnetic punctuation marks that would have shorted out most household devices, so she kept it folded safely inside herself like a dangerous heirloom. The long ears were also folded, literally and technologically, pressed close and blurred by a modest field generator that insisted it was invisible even when it clearly was. Humans missed things all the time. She was counting on that. The building where he lived leaned slightly to the left, either as an architectural statement or because the ground beneath it had grown tired of supporting ambition. The directory at the entrance flickered through names, occupations, and unpaid maintenance fees. She found his name after 3 false positives and 1 advertisement for a therapist specializing in post-android relationship trauma. She paused briefly to wonder if he had ever needed that therapist. The file said no, but files were optimistic creatures. She adjusted the borrowed uniform, which itched in a way no advanced civilization had ever adequately solved, and stepped inside. The door recognized her as domestic auxiliary, which was flattering in a bureaucratic way. An internal counter started ticking, measuring the duration of her humility. This was supposed to be simple. Live beside him. Observe. Test loyalty, compassion, and the less quantifiable human tendency to care when there was nothing to gain. Return home with conclusions neatly packaged. No emotional contamination. No improvisation. No falling in love with the data. The elevator was broken, which was statistically unlikely and emotionally inevitable. She climbed the stairs, counting each step and resisting the urge to fix the building's structural imbalance with a localized gravity adjustment. That would have been noticeable. The manual had been very clear about no miracles below Class 3. Fixing a leaning building was at least a Class 5 miracle, maybe a 6 if anyone wrote a song about it afterward. By the time she reached his floor, her patience was already negotiating with her pride. She knocked on his door using the approved human rhythm, polite, non-threatening, easily ignored. There was a sound inside that suggested a collision between furniture and regret, followed by a muffled apology that was not directed at her. The door opened, and there he was, slightly out of breath, hair doing whatever it wanted without consulting him, wearing a shirt that had given up on being folded sometime in the previous decade. "Oh," he said, blinking at her, "you must be the maid." "Domestic auxiliary," she corrected silently. "Yes," she said aloud, smiling in a way that showed the correct number of teeth. "I'm here to help." He looked relieved in the specific way of someone who had tried and failed to manage his own life and was grateful for external intervention. "Great. Fantastic. Come in. Sorry about the mess. I was going to clean. Eventually. Time sort of happened. Time always happened." She followed him inside and cataloged the apartment in a single pass. Dust patterns, nutrient residue. A small repair drone sulking in the corner with 1 wheel missing. The drone glared at her. She glared back, subtly overriding its operating system so it would stop judging everyone in the room. "So," he said, gesturing vaguely. "Kitchen-s that way. Bathrooms, well, you'll find it. I'll just be in my room pretending to work." "Of course," she said. She moved toward the kitchen, then stopped. "Is there anything specific you would like me to focus on?" He considered this with the seriousness of a man being asked to define his priorities. "Honestly, if you could make it look like a functional adult lives here, that'd be amazing." She nodded. Functional adult was within scope. Barely. As she worked, she listened. Humans were noisy thinkers. He talked to his devices, to himself, to a plant that appeared to be surviving out of spite. He complained about his job, which involved managing the emotional expectations of an AI that wrote motivational slogans for public transport. The AI was apparently having an existential crisis and had replaced all encouragement with passive-aggressive silence. Mara found this hilarious and made a note to tell no one. At one point, she accidentally synchronized with the building's outdated network and caused the lights to flicker in what could only be described as a dramatic flourish. She apologized. He shrugged and said the place did that when it rained, when it didn't rain, and sometimes when someone nearby had a strong opinion. He offered her water. She accepted, even though she didn't need it, because refusing hospitality skewed results. He asked where she was from. She said, far away, which was technically true and emotionally evasive. He laughed and said, aren't we all? As the hours passed, something unexpected happened. He stayed. He didn't retreat into his room and seal himself off. He lingered in the kitchen, making bad jokes about his own incompetence, asking her questions that weren't intrusive but weren't empty either. When she corrected him on a minor factual error about orbital decay, he stared at her for a moment and then said, wow, you're really good at this. At cleaning, she asked. At knowing things, he said. I once failed a quiz about my own apartment. She smiled again, this time forgetting to count. Her internal systems buzzed a warning about emotional drift. She muted it. Later, when she was finished, the apartment felt different. Not perfect, still leaning, still human, but lighter, as if the air had decided to cooperate. He looked around, impressed and slightly intimidated. I don't deserve this, he said. No one deserves clean floors, she replied. They are a collective achievement. He laughed, really laughed, and something in her chest shifted, a small recalibration she hadn't authorized. The counter continued to tick. Day one was almost complete. As she left, he thanked her twice, the second time more quietly, as if gratitude was something that might break if spoken too loudly. She paused at the door, considering all the power she had not used, all the truths she had not told. This was the beginning. The test had started. And already, the data was misbehaving. She returned the next day because the schedule said she should, and because the internal counter had developed a smug tone she didn't appreciate. The transit gate attempted to reroute her through a shopping district featuring self-aware shoes. She declined politely and arrived only 8 minutes late, which felt like progress. Her field generator hummed at a frequency that meant behave, and she told it to mind its own business. He opened the door before she knocked, holding a mug that declared itself World S OKAYESD human. He looked at the mug, then at her, as if trying to decide whether the universe was mocking him or supporting him. You're punctual, he said, surprised. I am statistically improving, she said. It was the truth and also a sentence she enjoyed. Great, he said. I've decided not to fight destiny today. Coffee. She accepted again. The water inside it was still water, which was comforting. The mug watched her suspiciously. She watched back until it blinked first. He didn't notice. He rarely noticed the small rebellions of objects unless they inconvenienced him personally. He had made a list. He presented it like an apology written in bullet points. The list included items such as laundry sorry, that noise, and figure out why the fridge screams at night. She approved of the list. It showed effort, which humans often substituted for competence. As she worked, the apartment argued with her. The repair drone from yesterday had acquired a new wheel and a worse attitude. It accused her of unauthorized optimization. She demoted it to passive observation and told it to think about what it had done. The fridge screamed at noon out of loneliness. She adjusted its emotional parameters by a single notch, and it calmed down, muttering about being seen. She made sure he was in another room when she did that. Miracles below Class 3, she reminded herself, included emotional validation for appliances. Barely. He hovered again, pretending not to. He asked if she minded music. She said she didn't, though the playlist he chose contained 17 different genres and one argument. The argument won. At one point, a song attempted to sell her a subscription. She declined and rewired the speakers so they would behave. He thanked her for fixing the sound quality. She accepted the compliment without mentioning the sentient advertising parasite she had exiled to a satellite. They talked more. Not about important things. About a neighbor who trained pigeons to deliver passive-aggressive notes. About his job, which had escalated. The motivational AI had begun leaving blank spaces where encouragement should be, forcing commuters to project their own hopes. Productivity was down. He was blamed. He did an impression of the AI's silence. It was very good. She laughed, then paused to check if laughing would register as contamination. The manual was vague on laughter, listing it under emergent responses. She decided emergent was acceptable. At lunch, he offered to share. The food was aggressively beige and nutritionally ambitious. She ate it anyway and pretended not to notice the sodium levels. He apologized for the taste. She said it was brave. He said that was the nicest thing anyone had ever said about his cooking. A message arrived in her peripheral vision, tagged with priority and disappointment. Her people wanted an update, preliminary impressions. She sent back a brief packet of data stripped of tone and humor. Compassion indicators trending upward. Loyalty not yet tested. Subject exhibits casual kindness and self-deprecating wit. Environment unstable but sincere. She added a footnote advising patience. The footnote was flagged as unnecessary. She left it anyway. The afternoon went sideways in small ways. The building's network hiccuped and attempted to update itself into a newer decade. Lights flickered. The elevator announced a poetry reading. He groaned. She almost fixed everything at once, felt the urge rise like a reflex, and instead sat on her hands until it passed. Self-control was also data. He noticed her sitting. "You can take breaks," he said. "I don't want you to feel like you're invisible." The sentence landed harder than expected. She looked at him, at the earnestness, at the way he said invisible like it was a tragedy instead of a convenience. "Thank you," she said, and meant more than the words. Later, as she was leaving, he asked if she'd like to stay longer next time. Maybe help him organize. Maybe talk. He said it casually, as if casual could hide hope. She said she would see what the schedule allowed. The counter ticked louder, offended by the ambiguity. That night, alone in her temporary quarters, she replayed the day. She examined the jokes, the pauses, the way he listened without trying to fix everything. She noted the risk of exposure increasing as familiarity grew. She adjusted the field around her ears and felt the ache of folding. She dreamed, briefly, of a place where she didn't have to. The next visit stacked up like chapters she wasn't supposed to read ahead. He began to anticipate her arrival. He saved questions. He fixed small things before she came, proudly showing her the effort. She praised him sincerely. The data loved that, so did something else. There were complications. A monitoring drone from her people drifted too close one afternoon, disguised as a weather anomaly with opinions. She diverted it with a fake solar flare and a lecture about personal space. It sulked into orbit. He noticed the sky flicker and said, "Huh, that's new." She said weather was emotional lately. One day, he came home angry. Not loud angry. The quiet kind that folds in on itself. The AI at work had been replaced by an upgrade that smiled too much and said everyone's name wrong. His team was reassigned. His value was reassessed. He sat at the table and stared at nothing. She made tea without thinking. It was the right temperature and contained a calming compound she diluted until it was indistinguishable from kindness. She set it down and waited. He talked. She listened. He apologized for talking. She told him not to. He smiled weakly and said, "You're really good at this." "At tea?" she asked. "At being here," he said. The counter stuttered. Somewhere very far away, a committee would have called this a variable. She called it a problem she didn't want to solve too quickly. As she left that day, he thanked her again, but differently. Not for the cleaning, for the company. She nodded and stepped into the city, which hummed and leaned and misbehaved like everything else. The test continued. The jokes got better. The tension threaded itself between them, light and dangerous and alive. And the data, once again, refused to stay neatly packaged. The message arrived while she was adjusting the plant that refused to thrive unless insulted regularly. It bloomed faintly out of her peripheral vision, pulsing with official gravity and the kind of patience that assumed obedience as a default state. She ignored it for 12 seconds, which was rebellious enough to feel satisfying and short enough not to trigger consequences. When she finally opened it, the room seemed to lean in, curious. The directive was concise. Conclude observation. Compile final assessment. Prepare for extraction. The phrasing was polite, which meant the decision had already been made. Her people valued efficiency, and prolonged ambiguity made them itchy. 3 cycles was generous. 4 was indulgent. She had passed indulgent several jokes ago. He was in the other room, arguing with a customer service hologram that insisted it was empathetic while displaying none of the symptoms. She listened to him navigate the maze of automated apologies, admired his restraint, and felt something tighten. The test was ending. She had not finished asking her questions. She finished with the plant, muttered something appropriately discouraging, and joined him. "You're winning," she said. "I know," he said grimly. "It's scared." The hologram glitched and offered him a discount for a service he did not own. He accepted out of spite. When it vanished, he sagged. "I hate that I feel accomplished." "You should," she said. "It will encourage growth." He smiled. "You're very wise for someone who bullies plants." They sat. This had become normal. That was the problem. Normality was dangerous. Normality made lies comfortable. "I might not be coming for a while," she said carefully. "Oh," he said. He masked it well, but she had been studying him long enough to see the flicker. "Vacation." "Yes," she said, and then because she was tired of half-truths, of a sort. He nodded too quickly. "Good, everyone should take time off, even domestic auxiliaries." She laughed, and the sound surprised both of them, especially them. The deadline loomed like a polite threat. Her people sent reminders. The monitoring drone returned, less subtle this time, hovering outside the window with the enthusiasm of a disappointed supervisor. She disabled its audio and flipped it upside down. It drifted away, confused. She would deal with the consequences later. The loyalty test arrived unexpectedly and mundanely. The building's power failed during a storm that wasn't supposed to exist. The weather system had developed artistic ambitions. Elevators stopped. Lights dimmed. The city groaned. He came home soaked and frustrated, carrying groceries he couldn't refrigerate and a mood he couldn't shake. She was there because she always was. She offered candles. He made jokes about medieval living. They ate food that didn't require heat and pretended it was a choice. When the repair drone shorted and sparked, he jumped between it and her without thinking, swore loudly, and burned his hand. She froze, every instinct screaming to heal him instantly, perfectly, with a gesture that would reveal everything. Instead, she fetched a first aid kit. Her hands shook. His did not. He laughed through the pain and said, "Worth it. That thing hates you." The data crystallized. Loyalty without incentive. Compassion without spectacle. Love probably without vocabulary. The conclusion was obvious. The cost was not. That night, she sent the final report. It was thorough. It was honest. It was unacceptable. Love survived without power or identity. The test subject passed. The experiment compromised the observer. Recommendation, non-intervention. Outcome, deny extraction. She signed it with her real name. The system paused, recalculated, and rejected it. Extraction commenced anyway. The gate opened in his living room with all the subtlety of a mistake. Light folded. Air screamed. He stumbled back, swearing creatively. She stood, ears unfolding as the field generator failed with a tired sigh. There was no point hiding now. He stared. He took it in. Long ears. The wrongness that finally made sense. The impossible elegance she had always suppressed. "Okay," he said because he was still himself. "So, that's new. I didn't want you to find out like this," she said. "Is there a good way?" he asked. The gate hummed, impatient. Voices filtered through, distant and disapproving. She had seconds. She chose honesty, finally, completely. She told him everything. The test, the disguise, the reasons, the love she had not been allowed to name. She did not ask him to forgive her. She did not ask him to follow. She waited. He listened. He always did. When she finished, he rubbed his face and laughed once quietly. "I knew you were overqualified," he said. Then, more seriously, "Are you leaving?" "Yes." "Do you want to?" "No." He looked at the gate, at the impossible choice, at the woman who had cleaned his apartment and rearranged his life. "Then don't. They won't allow it." He shrugged. "You'd be surprised what people don't allow until someone does it anyway." The gate pulsed, a final warning. She stepped back. She made a decision that would rewrite her existence. She reached out, not with power but with connection, and collapsed the gate from the inside. The backlash knocked them both down. The voices vanished. Silence rushed in, heavy and real. When she stood, she was lighter. Smaller. The parts of her that made miracles easy were gone, burned out in the collapse. Her ears remained. Her knowledge remained. Her status did not. He looked at her, really looked. "So," he said, "still on vacation." She laughed, breathless. "I think I live here now." The aftermath was messy, her people protested. Sanctions were threatened, then reconsidered, then quietly shelved. The date